Hello. What comes to mind when you think about India's geography? All good narratives about India's geography begin with how the Indian plate crashed into Asia millions of years ago and created the Himalayas. The fact is, this collision didn't create just the Himalayas. It created entire mountain chains all around the Indian subcontinent, making a sort of natural geographic barrier. Mountains are on the top half and ocean all around the bottom half. These mountains aren't really appreciated in typical maps of the region, so let's zoom in and tilt our view. Beginning almost very close to the ocean, these run almost the entire length of what is today Pakistan and parts of Afghanistan. Don't think of them as just walls or barriers, however, and don't be fooled by their desert-like appearance today. As I've explored before on this channel, the Earth's climate has shifted several times throughout history, and this region would have been slightly wetter and of better productivity a few thousand years ago. These mountain chains have passes, low altitude paths between high ranges through which migration, trade, and yes, invasions have also happened. After the climate started shifting around 10,000 years ago, it is here that we find the first evidence of farming in the Indian subcontinent at Meghar, among other sites, and over time, also great cities of ancient India such as Takshashila within the Gandhara region. For much of history, this region has been Indian civilization's northwest frontier, one of the transition zones where we interacted with the outside world through routes such as the Uttarapada, and it has been a part of a larger cosmopolitan trading network. Moving on, we reach the Himalayas, the youngest and tallest mountain ranges in the world, seemingly a world apart from the arid mountain region we just saw. The geographic importance of these mountain ranges come from the huge amounts of water that they lock up in the form of ice and snow. So much so that the Tibetan Plateau and the Himalayas together are called the third pole of the world. They also shield the monsoon clouds from escaping into Tibet, thus ensuring that northern India remains well watered. The mountain passes in these ranges have supported trade and migration between Tibet and northern India and a mixing of cultures in this transition zone. But since the Tibetan Plateau in general is sparsely populated, the Himalayas have usually served as a barrier between India and China and has not seen conflict till recent times. Moving on, we reach the rainforest-clad hills of northeast India which merge into those in what is today Myanmar. This region is one of the world's top biodiversity hotspots. Here too, there has been migrations of people, languages, and crops. It might have even been one of the routes through which rice reached India. But again, not as much as India's northwest frontier. Why is this region so important anyway? And where were all the people coming from? I want to take a little detour outside to show one part of Eurasia which has been critical to Indian history, the Eurasian steppe. It is an ecoregion, a region comprising of a similar kind of ecosystem. In this case, grasslands, savanna, and shrublands. The thing about steppes is that before the modern age with its very advanced ways of managing, fertilizing, and using this kind of land, the steppes was kind of a middle zone. It was not as fertile as river valleys which could support large settled civilizations, but it was also not as arid as a desert or tundra. It was an intermediate kind of land which supported, and supported well, a particular kind of livelihood, nomadic pastoralism. The reason why this is being mentioned here in a video about Indian geography is because steppes have been important not just for India, but for the history of the whole of Eurasia. This is because steppe has been an ecosystem mostly on the edge. When there is enough rainfall, or enough that the region used to get anyway, the steppe is able to support a larger population of pastoral nomads. And when the climate shifts for a bit, starts drying out, or there is conflict between the multiple tribes which populate the steppes, these people start streaming out from its edges towards more settled regions on all sides, towards Europe, towards the plains of China, and in certain occasions, the Indian subcontinent. But what were all of these people coming for? The easy answer is wealth. But where did this wealth come from? In historic times, the answer to that question, or start of that answer, lies in glaciers like these deep within the Himalayas. These melting glaciers erode the rock and lead to small streams which slowly pick up speed, twisting and turning and eroding stuff all along the way, and merge with other streams to form rivers which erode the hillsides even further, and finally emerge out into the plains. Not just one river though. For the big picture, zoom out, and then further out, and then further out, and there you have it. The Indo-Gangetic Plains, one of the most fertile regions of the world. It seems weird to think about it, but this entire region is filled with broken down Himalayan dust, replenished year after year, for a few million years now. In the Indus Plain, this is around 3,000 meters, and in the Ganga Plains, this is nearly 6,700 meters. Imagine, nearly 7-kilometer thick sediment created from eroding the Himalayas. And when you realize these entire plains were laid down in this manner, you can imagine how much these rivers would have changed their courses over hundreds of thousands of years. This has happened even in historic times, in the past 2,000 years or so, with the result that when a river shifts course, a settlement on its banks which relies on the river will decline. When the climate slowly started shifting between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, we see small farming settlements start appearing, and then an entire civilization in the Indus Valley, larger and larger cultures in the Ganga-Yamuna valleys, and then identifiable kingdoms and empires, because they were able to generate the sort of agricultural surplus which made this region vastly wealthy. The reason why this region holds one of the highest populations in the world today is not because the people there are extra fertile, it is because the region has always supported such large populations due to the soil fertility. What about the rest of India though? If you look at central India, that is parts of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Orissa, a strong natural feature there is the hilly terrain of the Vindhya and Satpura ranges, which have supported a wide variety of subsistence lifestyles before agriculture, and even today. The low elevation hills and the small streams arising from here has made this a site of many agricultural experiments. In ancient times, that is still around 2000 years ago, these mountains served as a boundary between North and South India, and even later, the dense forest made passage difficult. Going down further south is where we see the effect of India's geographic location within the world. The Indian peninsula juts out prominently, so much so that we got an entire ocean named after ourselves. This also allowed us to get right in the middle of the connections between parts of the West, Eastern Africa, West Asia, Europe, and parts of the East, Southeast Asia, and the sea route from China. Now within this region, the major geographical features are the Western and Eastern Ghats and the Deccan Plateau. The Western Ghats is a mountain range running along the western coast, almost cutting it off entirely from the interior, and since it's so huge, it blocks a lot of the rain clouds coming in from the sea, leading to highly productive, biodiverse tropical forests on one side and a semi-arid rain shadow region on the other. The Eastern Ghats are not so long and are mostly discontinuous, but they too have supported large rainforests and still do. The Deccan Plateau in the middle is a semi-arid region, meaning it doesn't get a whole lot of rain. The rivers which arise in the Ghats and flow through the peninsula are also not all perennial rivers, meaning they don't retain their full flow throughout the year, like the Ganga or Yamuna would. These are mainly monsoon-fed rivers with large, highly productive delta regions. For a huge oversimplification of societal evolution in peninsular India, consider this. A few thousand years ago, after the climate started warming and world over, human communities were picking up agriculture. Here, the first crops which were domesticated and grown were millets and legumes, which require less water, compared to rice and wheat in North India. Due to the lack of perennial rivers, a lot of the first farming settlements were agro-pastoral, not depending entirely on settled agriculture all around the year. Over time, by some estimates, as early as 4,000 years ago, we have some societies on coastal areas which created international trade in products like spices, and later pearls, ivory, precious stones, and so on. Kerala is a special case on this trade, and I'll get to that in a bit. Eventually, for the large empires which arose in the interiors, the Satavahanas in the beginning, and then the three Tamil kingdoms, Cheras, Cholas, and Pandyas, for example, for them, the control of these ports on both coasts was critical. Agricultural systems with crops suited to each type of land developed in time. Later on, with the development of agricultural tanks and better farming in the delta regions, we see larger empires which could even focus on overseas expansion. Kerala, like I said, well, actually the entire western coast, but I'll focus on Kerala. Kerala was unique in the sense that Western Ghats, its climate and environment, plays an overwhelming role in its history compared to the more arid Deccan Plateau. These large mountains stretch nearly unbroken from the southern tip, offering not many passages, except for significant ones like the Palakkad Gap. From very early on in history, these forests have offered a lot of goods which other people have wanted, pepper being the most prominent example. What this did is from early on, create international trade in products like cardamom, cinnamon, or pepper. The first direct sea route from Europe to India happened in search for this pepper, after all. But none of this would have been possible without the monsoon winds. Now, this is not about the importance of monsoon itself, which I think almost everyone living in India would know, but the wind system which brings those rain-bearing clouds. This has been, for thousands of years, a highly predictable natural feature in an age without ships with engines. When you need to use ships with sails to get around from place to place, having a predictable wind pattern like this helps sailors get to and get away from India easily and not have to sail along the coast. And this is exactly what's been happening since ancient Egyptians figured out the monsoon wind system from around 100 BCE. Traders could cross the open Arabian Sea towards ports on the western coast easily, and similarly for trade from the eastern coast towards Southeast Asia. That's pretty much it. A tropical, subtropical country with very defined geographical boundaries around with some clear entry points which needed to be defended, a long coastline which is central in a lot of east-west trade, a monsoon wind system which allows for predictable trade routes and gives a lot of rain, which within a tropical region allows for a lot of primary productivity, that is, stuff you can grow or harvest or domesticate, which in pre-modern times made the Indian subcontinent very prosperous. It's a little cliche now to say phrases like unity in diversity, but perhaps a look at the map tells us why. India really is a world unto itself.